Hey everyone, it's Bobby Sylvester and Mike Tagliere. This is the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. We're going to chat about some late round gems today. Tags, how's it going, buddy?
It's going, man. It's a great morning, actually. I woke up with my son. He had a rough night, so I woke up with him this morning, and we just sat on the couch and, trying to coddle him. But Rounders was on TV, so I sat there and I watched like the second half of Rounders, so pay that man his money.
Today we're going to be joined by guest Andy Behrens of Yahoo Sports. How was your weekend, Andy?
Oh, it was good. It was not filled with a great deal of sleep. I was in Las Vegas for the Stupa Law Firm auction that by Brad and Liz Loza and I have been tweeting about and have been sharing with the people. So it was a lot of fun. It's a really fun group of mostly RotoWire and Yahoo writers, analysts. We always have a good time together. So it was great. It was really good.
Hey, Andy, where can our listeners find you on Twitter?
Oh, they can find me at Andy Behrens, Behrens, and they can also follow the Yahoo Fantasy account and find all of our sketchy, questionable content.
Yeah. Andy's a great follow on Twitter. If you guys don't follow him, you guys are missing out. So make sure to follow him. You can also find us at Bobby Fantasy Pro and at Mike Tagliere NFL. So guys, we're going to hit on some of our favorite late round lottery tickets. But first, I want to ask you about the zero running back strategy, okay? For those of you listening who don't know, I wrote this article yesterday showing how to execute a zero running back mock draft. So that's where you don't pick a running back in the first 6 or even 8 rounds. And I was unconvinced of this strategy. And when I started writing it, I actually set out to show how bad it would look. Fellas, I'm sold now. This is the year. What do you think, Andy?
So a couple of, and I hate to, I don't want to be the guy who sounds like a dinosaur here. Listen, like it's fine if you're the only one in a draft doing it.
Yeah.
Put yourself in a draft where there's like 4 or 5 other people who think they're employing the sort of latest and greatest draft philosophy, and like it all just breaks down when 4 or 5 people try to do it. Now, all of a sudden, the receivers I think that you're collecting in round 3, round 4 aren't perhaps quite of the quality that you would like them to be.
Yeah.
It's not that much different from, like if you're in a hometown league, 10, 12 teams, and you're the one guy who's just going to stream defenses or go late round quarterback, or like all sorts of things will work really well if no one else is doing it. And then, a lot of people jump on board the same bandwagon, and it becomes an issue, and it becomes a lot more difficult to execute that strategy. Also, as a practical matter, if we just look at the top, I think it's the top 70 seasons all time in the NFL in terms of scrimmage yardage, like 69 of them belong to running backs. So excluding running backs from the first like 4 or 5 rounds of your draft is a sure way to tap out on the guys who are the absolute most valuable fantasy assets. So I don't like, generally speaking, I don't like setting hard and fast rules for myself and boundaries on where I'm going to draft different positions.
That makes a lot of sense. Both of those are great points. I mean, if you have the first 3 picks, I'm definitely taking a running back. I don't know. I guess I probably wouldn't take Zeke right now, but it makes sense. If you look at the stats, without getting too far away from our intended topics, have we learned anything new about Zeke?
I feel like the entire Zeke story is and was based on stuff that was already out there, right? Like,
yeah. It was kind of brought back up, Andy. It was brought back up because Adam Schefter was on Sirius XM radio, and he kind of said that it's still a possibility and that he wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable drafting Ezekiel Elliott. So when Adam Schefter says something like that, it obviously raises people's eyebrows, and that's the only thing that really was brought up.
I just don't think Schefter himself can even be too comfortable with it because I don't think he was intending to break any news. I mean, I think we all knew that there was still the Elliott investigation had not concluded, that it was still out there, that there's still a possibility of punishment. So I just feel like people should realize that nothing new has happened.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
We just have an NFL newsmaker who happened to come out and say, this thing isn't wrapped up yet. But there has been no breaking development.
Yeah, for sure. And I would have been, to be fair, I'd have been taking Antonio Brown before Ezekiel Elliott anyways. I've been a fan of saying Antonio Brown at number 3 since the start of off season pretty much, because I just think people kind of go overboard. And Andy, I loved your points in the 0 RB thing. Like I said it before last year. I'll say it before this year. I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, all those 0 running back guys were wrong last year. I'm not going to say that, because every single year things can change. And it's the generic thing to say is that draft the right players and you win. I mean, but it's really true. What you want to do is you want to put yourself in the best position to win, and the best position to win is by taking the best value that's on the board. So as Andy said, if everybody that you're drafting with is going 0 running back, scoop up the values that are there at running back. You know what I mean? So it's just, I never go in with one strategy either. And that's why Andy's stuck around this industry so long, is because, he's a Hall of Famer. And the reason he is because, he's smart enough to figure that stuff out.
That's exactly what Dalton Del Don did in our Experts League, is from Yahoo Sports also. It was a PPR league, and a lot of people were scooping up wide receivers. He went out and got 3 of the baddest running backs, and oh man, his team is enviable. It looks excellent. I'm really jealous. But I'm looking at it, and I don't like to do the suspension team either, but I feel like it's a good mix of the two this year. Like, I agree with you guys. Don't enter a draft saying, I'm going to do this strategy.
Right.
But if it's there, be aware that you can do this type of thing, where if your number 1 and 2 running backs are, say, Doug Martin and Kenneth Dixon, I mean, you can get by with some receiving running backs. And then you go into the playoffs and you've got these 3 killer wide receivers. Maybe you've got Gronk, Drew Brees, and then you've got Doug Martin and Kenneth Dixon, who I think would be drafted 40, 50 spots higher if they weren't suspended.
Yeah, for sure. And well, I mean, you can get by, like you mentioned, if you're in a PPR league, it's a little bit easier. You can plug in someone like Chris Thompson, Duke Johnson, and be more than okay just trotting them out there for a couple of weeks, not put your team in a hold. The issue that I think people kind of overlook when it comes to Doug Martin or Kenneth Dixon is the fact that, if you start off let's say that you don't land, if you're in a standard league and you land someone like Jamal Williams and you're relying on him or Samaje Perine, and these guys don't get to start right away. The issue is that if your team starts 0-3 or 1-3 or, you know what I mean, somewhere in that vicinity, you're going to be forced to do things with your roster that you wouldn't necessarily do otherwise. Where if you're sitting at 3-1, you can wait on Samaje Perine to earn that starting job if he hasn't already. But, that's my only worry with those guys. But Doug Martin has crept to the point where he is beyond expensive. He's being drafted in, I think the top 25 running backs now, so he's beyond the price point for me. But Kenneth Dixon is someone we're going to talk about later in the show, because as Bobby's going to mention here, we're going to be talking about some late round lottery picks in fantasy drafts.
Yeah. I just have one stat for you guys before we wrap this up. In 2016, 21 running backs scored over 150 standard fantasy points, only 11 wide receivers. So I don't know why, but it seems like things kind of flipped a little bit last year. Maybe there weren't as many injuries. I don't know what it was, but it's an interesting stat nevertheless. I agree that it doesn't make sense to use Jamal Williams and Samaje Perine as your 1 and 2, but if you draft 8 of those guys, if you take 8 lottery tickets, it makes sense. And that's kind of how I want to transition into this. We're going to be talking about running backs. And Andy, who's one late round running back that you think is kind of a lottery ticket that you want to own?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with a guy that I just bought for, I don't know, I felt a little curious. He only went for $3 in the Stewart Law Firm league. I like Kareem Hunt a lot.
Yeah. So,
rookie guy who had over 1,800 scrimmage yards at Toledo last season. Compact runner, really fun. Smallish school, really fun tape though. Plenty of off-season buzz around him, and it's not as if he's blocked by just a dominant back in Kansas City, right? Spencer Ware really tailed off at the second half last season, dealt with a bunch of injuries last season. I have no trouble thinking of Hunt as somebody who shares the workload early in the year and probably finishes the season with, I would assume, the most rushing yards, most scrimmage yards on the team. I think he was drafted 3rd round to be the eventual replacement for Ware.
I'm a Spencer Ware guy. It seems like there's a big divide. It's either people love Spencer Ware, they love Kareem Hunt.
I like them both.
You know what? That's the thing. Is for me, I like Andy's pick here. Even though I'm a Spencer Ware guy, I'm not totally dismissing the fact that Kareem Hunt, it's possible that he takes over. The one thing that I will say though is that people on Spencer Ware's season last year, it's a little recency bias because the way he started the year and the way he finished the year are two different things, right? I'm working on an article right now. It's a massive article, so it's not going to be released for a little bit, but I can share this little tidbit, is that Ajayi and Spencer Ware, in terms of RB1 performances, RB2, RB3 even performances, so we're looking top 12, 24, 36, they were nearly identical. And actually, Spencer Ware had more in terms of percentage-wise. He had more RB1, RB2 percentages than Ajayi did. But Ajayi is looked to have a phenomenal season, and can we trust him? And the reason is because Spencer Ware started off the year so well, and then he really dipped down over the second half. He was really just a volume flex play. But the thing is Andy Reid's offense, that's what we want, right? We want whoever's going to be starting there. And from what I'm hearing right now, it's that it's supposed to be Spencer Ware's job. I do think that Kareem Hunt is kind of overtaking Charkandrick West's role right now, and with the possibility that he can overtake Spencer Ware if Spencer Ware does in fact struggle like he did after the suspension or after the concussion that he suffered last year. So for me, again, I'm a Spencer Ware guy, but I'm not drafting him as if he's going to be the starter all year, because there are legitimate concerns that they drafted Kareem Hunt as high as they did. And the fact that people have said, we had Jeff Ratcliffe on the show last week talking about how Kareem Hunt actually fits Andy Reid's system extremely well. So I think this is an excellent lottery round ticket. Lottery round ticket, I mean, that's the definition. You're not automatically going to win, but if this guy pans out, he could be your ticket to win your league. So I like it.
I'm looking at where these guys are at Mock Draft Calculator, just ADP wise. They're separated by almost 60 picks, which to me is too much. Yeah. I don't know if they end up at some sort of 50-50 split. I doubt it's going to be 70-30 in favor of Ware, but I don't think there should be 50 or 60 picks between them right now.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even if there's a 15-20% chance that Kareem Hunt's an RB1, he's worth drafting at his value, and that's exactly what I think he is. Maybe even higher, maybe 20-25%, because it's Andy Reid's offense, like you said. Look, I think Spencer Ware was terrific last season when he was healthy, but I mean, I also don't like to predict injuries, but if you were to predict an injury for a running back, wouldn't you immediately think of Spencer Ware? I mean, concussions come back quicker than anything else. I think he's probably the most likely starting running back to be injured this year. And if he is, it's a great opportunity for Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, I wouldn't ever, I don't, that's the thing, is I'm usually betting against the trend on injuries. Like, there are some people that are completely risk adverse and they don't want to draft CJ Anderson, or they don't want to draft Adrian Peterson, or some of these running backs, Amir Abdullah, that have had some injury issues. I'm tending to bet against the trend because I want to bet on someone coming back. And concussions is something that unfortunately has kind of taken the game over. But from what we know, it was Spencer Ware's first real concussion. And hearing Andy, you're a Chicago guy too. I heard one of our players talking about how he came back from his concussion last year. His name is escaping me right now. I don't know why. But he came back and he said that while he was able to go through the motions, that everything was just like a little tick off, where he just did not feel like himself. And it's just like, for seeing Spencer Ware fall off kind of the way he did. Now, granted, they lost one of their run blocking guards up front, and it coincided a little bit with it. So there could be multiple factors, but I'm wondering if the concussion really hindered Spencer Ware more than people kind of understand.
Well, Ware was also a guy who had sort of a medley of things too, right? It wasn't just the concussion. There was a rib issue late in the season. I'm pretty sure 17. I'm pretty sure that it was more than one thing that contributed to the slower second half last year.
So, guys, my pick is Rex Burkhead. I saw Evan Silva tweeting about this with Scott Barrett from Pro Football Focus. They have a bet going on. I don't know if it's an official bet yet, but Scott Barrett thinks that I don't want to say it wrong. I don't remember who was on which side, but one of them thought that Rex Burkhead was going to get a lot more work than a lot of people are saying, and the other one thought Mike Gillislee is just going to get a ton of work. He's going to be the workhorse. I love Gillislee, but the fact that Belichick is just so volatile, we have no idea what he's going to do with his running backs. I want to own Rex Burkhead, because if he's the guy getting all those goal line carries, and I don't see why he would, because Gillislee was the best in the NFL at that last season, and he also was great in yards per carry. But Burkhead, if you watch him on tape, I think he was clearly the best running back in that Bengals offense, and I think Belichick saw that. He's going to get his crack. I don't know if it's going to be first or if it's going to be second, but if he improves and takes over that job, he's a great player to own. I think he'd be Stephen Ridley.
So, Andy, I want to get your take on this. I will let you know that Scott is the one that has Mike Gillislee, and Evan is with Burkhead. So the bet is that Gillislee, will he outscore Burkhead in PPR by 1.5 times? Will he score 1.5 times the points?
I really appreciate what a Burkhead truther Evan is, and he hasn't veered away from it at all, right? Like the more positive buzz we get on Gillislee, the more Evan just doubles down on Burkhead. I love it. I think Gillislee is probably a top 12 running back this year. I think he's really, really good. And just assuming...
So, I mean, his ADP has been rising. You're taking him even higher than it is right now?
Oh, yeah.
I'm with you.
I feel like listen, I've had Gillislee as a top 15 running back in my ranks for, I don't know, basically since we ranked players months ago. So I feel like the ADP is getting to where I kind of have him. He was a really early toss, and by the way, in the auction that I just had, and he went for, I forget if he went for 30, he went for close to it, though. He was certainly, like, I mean, people are paying an expectant price, but it's based a little bit on how good he's been. You know, like, it just reeks of one of these situations where, you know, Belichick sees an underutilized player within the division and absolutely maximizes him when they get him in their own building. And we know what Blunt did last year. I think Gillislee's a better runner. I see no reason why Gillislee can't get all of the inside the 5 touches for that team. I just think he's a wonderful player in a great situation. I think he's going to have a big year. And, you know, paying $25, $26, whatever it was at auction doesn't seem crazy to me at all. I think Burkhead is a really nice player. I'm shocked at how all in Evan is with him.
Yeah, I'm right there too. So yeah, I'm gonna go definitely against you on this one, Bobby, because the reason, I mean, Burkhead is someone that if you want to get in best ball leagues or something like that, I guess, because you just never know with Patriot running backs. But Rex Burkhead is a guy that literally has had 2 games in his career with more than 10 carries. Like, that's it. And like more than
Ty Montgomery.
Well, that is actually true. But so
Ty Montgomery could be an entirely separate podcast.
It definitely can. There's a lot to talk about. But so one of the game that everybody is hinging their Rex Burkhead argument on is a Week 17 game against the Baltimore Ravens, who were out of it. Like they were not playing for anything in Week 17. It really it blows my mind that people are putting this much stock in Rex Burkhead. So when they signed him, it was like, we have to take notice, right? But let's look at him. He's a special teams player. Bill Belichick, that's what special teams means a lot to Bill Belichick, so they paid to bring him in. They ended up paying James White more money. Dion Lewis isn't going away. Mike Gillislee is someone they purposely went out and stole from the Bills and knew what was at stake. You know, the Bills, they were trying to undercut all of it. So Mike Gillislee, Evan's concern with him is that he doesn't catch passes and that he played special teams as well. Well, LeGarrette Blount, if I'm not mistaken, without looking, I'm pretty sure LeGarrette Blount caught like 7 passes last year. So we don't need Mike Gillislee to catch passes out of the backfield. We don't need him to be that guy. Rex Burkhead is not being brought in to replace LeGarrette Blount. Like, I don't know where that came from, but like I said, he could be the next Brandon Bolden, where people are just waiting for this opportunity to happen, and it never does.
Oh, that would suck.
For me, I think James White deserves a bigger opportunity. I think Dion Lewis is almost James White insurance. Mike Gillislee is the new LeGarrette Blount, and Rex Burkhead could be the new Brandon Bolden or DJ Lewis. So it's just for me, there's too many targets in this offense to try and narrow it down to him. But like I said, in best ball, I could understand it because you might get like 2 weeks out of it where he just breaks a big play.
I mean, I will also say that Burkhead is essentially free in drafts. He goes outside the top 150 picks almost everywhere. So if you're just looking, final round of a draft, if you're looking for any way to get a really, really cheap share of the NFL's best offense, I mean, it's still a no-brainer pick.
I'd still rather have James Conner than Rex Burkhead, but I've talked about him on so many shows because Le'Veon Bell has got injured so many times, and it's a perfect fit for James Conner if he does get the job. But I don't want to keep rehashing those old players. So I was giving you all a new name, and no one's really been talking to you about Dion Lewis or James White. But I'll tell you what, when they get the ball in their hands, they've been dangerous the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And they're worth owning if especially if you're doing the 0 running back strategy and you're looking for a guy who's going to be consistent. I think they're going to help you out in that way.
Yeah, James White is so good. He's been underrated, and it's like we finally saw it on the main stage that James White, I've been saying it for a long time that James White is better than Dion Lewis in that he's been more efficient with his touches in the New England offense, and that didn't change again last year. Even when Dion Lewis had his breakout season, James White was a more efficient running back with his touches. So I'm glad we got to see it on the national stage. I'm glad that the Patriots decided that James White deserved that extension, and it was like the most that they've paid a running back in a long time. So they obviously value James White, and he's not someone that really contributes on special teams. but I don't want to spend too much time more on that. The Patriots backfield, we could talk about that forever. But,
yeah, I mean, they're like one of 9 weapons, so who really cares, right?
Right. Well, I want to get your guys' take on one player that I'm starting to come around on a lot, and he's someone that had hype this offseason, but all of it's really died down with the addition of Eddie Lacy. CJ Prosise. I think that he could be a late round lottery ticket. I mean, I know we talk about this kid. He used to be a wide receiver, and he comes to the NFL, and people were comparing him to somewhat of a David Johnson-esque type player, where he's going to be a great receiver, and he's able to handle some of a workload, behind a Seattle Seahawks offensive line that is pathetic. That's why I'm starting to come around on him some, because Eddie Lacy, while he was a fine player, he wasn't seeing 8-man fronts, when he was playing with the Packers. Going on to Thomas Rawls, he's someone that didn't impress in his second year. There were a little bit of question marks coming out of his breakout season, but CJ Prosise is someone that impressed in his time that he had last year. And if this team really thinks that Luke Joeckel is going to fix their offensive line problems, they're sorely mistaken. And they're going to be dumping off to their running backs a lot more than they have in years past. So CJ Prosise, if this kid can stay healthy, I think he can be your lottery ticket, where maybe Eddie Lacy and Thomas Rawls are just guys that are clock killers for the Seattle Seahawks.
Andy, I'll let you take this one first.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. If you think about when the Seahawks have been really at their most effective in the passing game in the last couple of years, it's when Russell Wilson gets the ball out really quick. I think there's a path for Prosise to finish this season with, and again, he'd have to stay healthy, all the usual caveats. Right. For him to finish the season with 70-plus receptions. I think that is definitely in play. I don't think that's something that we'll see. His usage is going to be safe in some regard, right? It's going to be some form of committee. I think Rawls is still going to be involved. I don't think Eddie Lacy should be viewed as a guy who's naturally in line for 250-plus touches, anything like that. I think we're going to see a multi-headed approach there, and I think Precise's role is relatively clear and relatively safe. I think he's going to catch a ton of passes for that team, and they won't, he's not going to run the ball more than, I don't know, let's call it 120 times, 130 times. I don't think we're going to see many more carries than that, and that might be the high end. But I think he's a wonderful receiving option, and I think he's going to have a huge role in that backfield.
Yeah.
I think he's a really good bet, Tags. With that being said, I don't necessarily consider him a lottery ticket, because what's his best case scenario? Like maybe running back 15? It would be nice. I think he has a better chance of getting to running back 15 than the majority of the guys being drafted that late. But with that being said, I mean, if I'm picking a running back that late, I'm going all lottery tickets. I want 4 lottery tickets on my bench. And one guy that stands out to me, Wayne Gallman. I think he could take over the job from Paul Perkins, because I'm not super impressed with Perkins. I was really impressed with Gallman. I feel like he was overlooked because of Mike Williams and Deshaun Watson at Clemson. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins the job in preseason. I'd rather have him than CJ Prosise, even though he's been picked 50 picks later, just because of the potential upside.
No, Bobby, you're missing this, but I'm throwing up at my microphone. No way. I mean, and the thing is, I like Wayne Gallman as like a prospect, but like, so if something happens to Paul Perkins, I actually think Paul Perkins is better than people think, but if something happens to him, Orleans Darkwa is someone that's been getting hyped up through camp. Shane Vereen is still there. They didn't cut him, which they could have saved.
Gallman,
they could have saved money by cutting Shane Vereen, and like I was waiting for it to happen, it never did. So he's still part of their plans too. So I think it would be somewhat of a timeshare. But no, not over Prosise. Like if you're talking in that range,
I want the lottery tickets, man.
Andy,
I want like 3-star running backs, and Prosise is never going to be that.
I don't think there's any chance that Vereen just goes away. I think Vereen has a big role there, and I think it's going to be uncomfortable for Perkins. It's I do kind of like the idea of just purely betting against Paul Perkins, who was fine last year but didn't really flash at any point. And I think Gallman is a really, really good player. So I think Gallman could find his way into serious touches there, but I don't think Vereen goes away. So I don't think of Gallman as a guy who can possibly find a path to just an every down workload either.
Yeah. Davis Webb and Wayne Gallman is the future of the Giants. No, but in reality, like so a player that's gotten some. It's kind of like a news item that we could bring up right now, because I'm looking at ADP right now. And guys, let's talk about this. Jonathan Stewart is going 1 pick in front of CJ Prosise. I would 100 out of 100 times take CJ Prosise over Jonathan Stewart.
Give me Stewart, baby.
I know. Hold on a second. I know some people are talking about Stewart's going to receive the majority of carries and this that. Do you want to know what the ceiling is for Jonathan Stewart, Bobby? He has finished as a top 18 running back twice. You know who else did that? Joik Bell. Jonathan Stewart in his career has as many 25-point games in PPR as Jeremy Langford has in his career. Like, Jonathan Stewart has zero, like, nada upside. Like, all you're hoping for is a goal line plunge with him, and I'm not betting on it. Andy, because I know, obviously, we know Bobby's going to go with Jonathan Stewart here. Jonathan Stewart's on the table, so is CJ Prosise. Which one are you picking?
Oh, I'm definitely picking Prosise.
Yes.
I'm not buying. And the thing is, I'm like a long-time Jonathan Stewart guy too. I think he's been good. I think he's been really good. Obviously, his problem is that he can't stay on the field. I always think that his tape looks better than almost anybody thinks it is. But I also think Christian McCaffrey is a future star. And for all the off-season buzz about Stewart still being the guy, I don't buy it at all.
Yeah. Bobby, go ahead and give your 2 cents on Jonathan Stewart and explain to me why he should be taken over CJ Prosise.
It doesn't have as much to do with Jonathan Stewart as it has to do with that Seattle offense. I mean, I understand that, they've got not many passing options, but I actually like Tyler Lockett. We're going to talk about him in a little bit. Paul Richardson has a lot of upside, so I understand that Prosise does have a path to those 70 receptions. I don't think it's probably going to happen. I don't imagine that he actually plays that much this season. And I'm just, the offensive line is so dreadful that I just think if he gets any carries, it's not really going to go anywhere. If Lacey gets hurt, is Prosise even the guy, or do they split it up? I'm just not that high on Prosise. It doesn't have as much to do with Stewart as it does with just not wanting to draft Prosise unless he drops 20, 30 picks.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I do like Kenneth Dixon, who's going 1 pick after Prosise. I'm okay with Duke Johnson too. Him and Prosise, I'm gonna have to do a little bit more research on that in terms of who I'd take. I think Prosise probably has a higher ceiling just because the Browns just seem like they're stuck on Isaiah Crowell and they don't really want Duke Johnson to be the guy. They don't want to create a competition at all. So I don't know. It's a weird area, but I'm the more time that goes off in the offseason, I'm starting to like CJ Prosise more and more as he keeps falling down draft boards.
So guys, we're doing another signed jersey giveaway. This time we got Antonio Brown. We went Le'Veon Bell, and then we went T.Y. Hilton, which we just gave out to John from Pennsylvania. And now we're doing a signed Antonio Brown jersey giveaway from pristineauction.com. All you have to do to enter for that, and by the way, if you guys already entered, you're entered for every contest for the rest of the season. Just take a screenshot of you subscribing and reviewing us on iTunes and send it to us at contest@fantasypros.com, and you'll be entered for this one and all future ones.
Yes, guys, Pristine Auction is the sponsor of today's show. That is PRISTINE auction.com. Go and check them out. They have hundreds of items up for available every single day. I unfortunately lost a bid on an Amari Cooper signed helmet. That's something that I was trying to get.
It was me that beat you out for it.
Oh, yeah? The love is starting to get there. I mean,
not.
It's going to happen. It's like Amari Cooper is going to happen. Just understand that. And so people are starting to catch on. I got outbid on that one. But guys, go there, check it out. You don't pay for anything unless you win the item. All we ask when you go there, they're going to ask how you heard about them. Let them know that Fantasy Pros sent you. That way we're able to do, these giveaways that we've been doing. We're on our 3rd jersey now. Hopefully, maybe down the road we start doing some helmets. Who knows? But they do guarantee that everything is authentic, only from the most trusted sources. Go check them out, pristineauction.com.
Okay, guys, so wide receiver, I already hinted towards my guy. Andy, who's your guy that you want to take as a lottery ticket?
Somebody that I'm routinely seeing going outside the top 100, and I get it, he had health issues last year. John Brown falls outside the top 100
Of course,
picks.
yes.
Yeah, and again, obviously, like a multitude of health issues were a problem last year. Dealt with sickle cell trait, all kind. There's been a hamstring in the off season. It's been, plenty of medical red flags here. He's a burner, still perfect for the offense. People may or may not know Carson Palmer treats him like a pet in the offseason, right? They're together all the time. This has gone on for a couple of off seasons now. So they're really close. Obviously, we've seen Larry Fitzgerald. His role has changed. He's an aging player. There's no Michael Floyd in the way anymore. Brown he's just a year removed from a 1,000-yard season. Big play specialist in a vertical offense. I just absolutely love him at his current price.
John Brown, if anybody listens to this podcast, they know John Brown has been the guy I've attached my name to this offseason. Like, if I'm wrong on John Brown, you can come and destroy me, because I will have John Brown on every single roster. I talked about it. The cyst on his spine. A lot of people talk about the sickle cell trait, but nobody really seems to know about the cyst that he had on his spine. He had it removed in the offseason, or drained, I should say, and he said within 24 hours he was feeling normal again. Bruce Arians is saying that he looks like the Smokey Brown that they drafted drafted.
Yeah.
He can't wait. He's running routes that he didn't run last year. Looking at him on a grand scope of things over his entire career, so I'm not even just picking one spot, I'm going through his entire career here. In games where he's seen more than 5 targets, he averages 72 yards per game and 14.5 PPR points. In the 24 games where he has seen 5 or less, just 29 yards per game and 6.5 PPR points. So I'm not asking for much in terms of 6 targets per game. Larry Fitzgerald's 34 years old. JJ Nelson is a bit player. He's a guy that he's just a role player. He's gonna stretch the field. He's gonna get some carries out of the backfield. Jaron Brown, another guy. Michael Floyd and Larry Fitzgerald were younger. Michael Floyd was actually solid, back in the 2015 season when John Brown finished as the number 21 fantasy receiver.
Yep.
And he did that with less than 105 targets. I can't explain how difficult that is to do. And this year, I'm lining him up right around that 115 to 120 target mark. And if he gets there, he's going to finish inside the top 24 wide receivers, and you are going to get the steal of your draft. I just came out with an article last week on him saying that he is fantasy's best kept secret right now.
Oh, I agree. There's a ton of profit potential here. It wouldn't shock. I mean, what's his ceiling? Top 12? Top 15?
Yeah, I think so.
Top 15.
I think he could very easily be the number 1 on that team. And Carson Palmer was a top 5 quarterback 2 years ago, and he looked great at the end of the season. I think John Brown could be phenomenal. I'm with you, Tags. I mean, I'm not as gung-ho about him because I've got Kevin White in my back pocket, but John Brown is a guy that I would love to get in every single league.
Yes, 100%. My guy I'll move on to is Jeremy Maclin. A lot of people, when he went to Baltimore, nobody's really talking about him. But the reason I say that he's a lottery ticket is because, we talk about Steve Smith and how Steve Smith was somewhat of a late round lottery ticket himself a couple of years back with the Ravens. And then, we start seeing all of these targets. While I don't think Jeremy Maclin has top 15 upside like John Brown necessarily does, but I think that he's going to be a top 25 fantasy wide receiver. And the reason I say that is because every single year, Joe Flacco produces a wide receiver. I think it was top 27. There's always at least one top 27 wide receiver. There's only been 1 year where he's produced 2 top 25. So I know that Mike Wallace was like the cool thing to do this offseason where people were saying, I said it last year, which is why I owned a lot of Wallace last year, is that he's always finished as a top 30 wide receiver. But with Jeremy Maclin coming there, they're saying that he's going to assume the Steve Smith role. And when you figure that Kamar Aiken's gone, Steve Smith is gone, now Dennis Pitta is gone. I mean, are you going to throw 100 plus targets to Ben Watson, who's like 90? No, you're not going to do that. Danny Woodhead's going to occupy some of that shorter role, but I think Jeremy Maclin, when healthy, is one of the better receivers in the NFL. I think people just forget how good he actually is because you haven't really seen his field stretching ability with Alex Smith. He obviously can do some of the underneath stuff. He could play the slot. There's so much to like about him. I am more than comfortable projecting him as a top 30 wide receiver.
He kind of feels like a rookie because, when you're with Alex Smith, no one has any idea what you can do. Jeremy Maclin is a superb athlete. I can't wait to see what he does with Joe Flacco, who's throwing an extra 150, 200 passes per season. And I think Macklin's probably the number 1 there. That's a great call. I'm moving him up my rankings as we're talking right now, Tex.
For what it's worth, Joe Flacco last season finished with the 5th highest single season pass attempts all time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people understand just how extreme the volume is there because, hey, the receivers haven't been good. Flacco himself hasn't been great, but 670 pass attempts is no joke.
Yep, and even the year before that, the Ravens led the NFL in pass attempts. So it's 2 years running now that they've led the NFL in pass attempts. So again, with all these targets that have kind of gone, that have left, I'm all over Jeremy Maclin.
I was thinking about saying Perryman because I do like Perryman, that elite athleticism. But, once they signed Maclin, I kind of dropped off of Perryman a little bit. So he's interesting to me. I already talked about Chris Conley a ton. I love Chris Conley as a very last round, if you don't have a kicker in your league, addition. You can go back and listen to the Sleeper episode where I just slobbered all over him. Marquise Lee is another guy that, he was the number 1 wide receiver for Jacksonville last year. And he didn't even really start most games. So now I think maybe they just give him the ball a lot more and we see just how good he is. So he's interesting to me. But my guy's Tyler Lockett. And my guy's Tyler Lockett because, if you look back at his rookie season, I think he was every bit as electric as Tyreek Hill, who's going 1,000 picks higher right now. And I know Lockett's coming off an injury as well. But what if Lockett is better than he was his rookie season? He's 24 years old now. He was just a kid back in his rookie season when he had 68 targets for 664 yards and 6 touchdowns. What if he gets a bigger role? What if he runs the ball some? I love Tyler Lockett's potential. It's not a safe pick whatsoever, but it's a nice lottery ticket.
Yeah, I got mocked on the PFF podcast like so many times last year for saying that Tyler Lockett was going to have the week that everybody was waiting for. And I was a Tyler Lockett guy last year, but the injuries have gotten to the point where I'm out.
Okay.
Andy, I'm not sure where you're at on him, but to see his injury that he suffered at the end of the season was gruesome.
Right.
And it looked like something that could be a career ender for a guy that relies so much on his speed and agility the way that Tyler Lockett does.
Yeah.
I do think he's a classic sort of last year's bum guy. Carries a price tag that is not intimidating in any way. And there was such an expectant price paid on Lockett last year. I feel like by the end of draft season, you just saw him going at a place where, man, he was going to have to not only reproduce his all the thrilling plays from his rookie season, but he was going to have to be a high volume receiver almost for that to have made
he was
any
a top
sense.
70 pick, right?
Yeah, and that was, again, looking back, hindsight, all that, that was too high on a guy who, that we were pricing him basically at his something probably close to his ceiling, but this year's price, he's basically a final rounder. I think it's fine.
Yeah. Do you guys have any other wide receivers you want to talk about? I hit on like 4 of them, so that's kind of cheating.
I wanted to throw one more name out there because I'm dumbfounded that his name hasn't crept up more than it has. I mean, he's being drafted behind Mike Williams of the Chargers and John Ross of the Bengals. Quincy Enunwa is the 53rd wide receiver off the board. Like, are we serious on this? Because Quincy Enunwa is a guy that finished as the number 42 wide receiver last year. I've talked about it before where he had, I think it was 23 less targets than Brandon Marshall coming from the same exact quarterbacks, and he scored like 20 more fantasy points than Marshall. Not to say that he's a better receiver than Marshall, but we're talking about he's the actual number 1 for this offense. And now a lot of people will say it's the Jets. You don't want any part of the Jets. Well, we could talk about the Browns last year and how Terrell Pryor had value despite being on the Browns. So, I mean, Josh McCown is a guy that when he was with the Bears, people were clamoring for him to be the guy throwing to Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. So, if Josh McCown is starting week 1, I think Quincy Enunwa is being extremely undervalued. Now, if they go to Bryce Petty, I mean, I still want
Enunwa. He's the single safest wide receiver outside the top 100. Yeah. I feel like you can plug him into your flex or wide receiver 3 and be very happy about it.
I tend to agree with that. He's probably still going to have value with Petty, but 53rd wide receiver off the board, we can do better than this, guys.
Yeah, I mean, the experts do better. I mean, Andy was talking about earlier in the show how Mike Gillislee went for so much more in an expert draft than he really would in a standard listener league. And that's the thing is, like, the experts all agree on these certain players. Take notice, okay? If they agree so much more, if they have him so much higher than an ADP, that means they're guys you should be targeting. I absolutely believe it, and Anun was one of those guys.
Yeah.
I will also say that I think somebody who's weirdly cheap is Tyrell Williams.
Yeah.
Coming off a 1,000-yard season, 7 touchdowns, right? They throw the ball all the time, 6'4". He's got plenty of speed. I think we're sort of overestimating the impact that Keenan Allen's return is going to have. Mike Williams has basically missed the entire offseason program for that team. I see no reason why Tyrell can't. If he doesn't reproduce last season entirely, why he can't still finish as a 900-yard receiver.
He should. I really do hope this kid gets the opportunity because it's really sad to see him produce the way he did last year and then be questioned as much as he is this offseason. And truth be told, in my projections, I think I had him as around the number 48 receiver. So that's like I felt bad even having him there. But when you start to project the offense and trying to think, Hunter Henry's going to get some more targets, Brandon Oliver is coming back to the offense. Like all these pieces that are there. I want to project him for more because I just do. I mean, I felt like I was almost undershooting Keenan Allen, but at the same time, Tyrell Williams is a guy that finished as the number 13 fantasy wide receiver last year. Keenan Allen has never finished better than number 17, but yet people are quick to anoint Keenan Allen as the guy. Now, injuries...
If he had been healthy the full season, he would have finished top 5.
Bobby, but your argument against guys like Le'Veon Bell and against guys like Spencer Ware was just injuries, and Keenan Allen is a guy that has not been able to stay healthy. So that I'm not betting on injuries, but my take is that there is too many options in this offense for me to like bet on a guy that's being taken in the top 4 rounds like Keenan Allen is. But Tyrell Williams, like Andy said, he's being taken like around the 150th player off the board. Yeah. So you're not investing much at all for a guy that finished, like I said, top 13 last year.
I like Le'Veon Bell and I like Spencer Ware. The only reason I brought up their injury risk is for upside with their backups.
Right.
Keenan Allen, I just wrote a piece about him being the biggest bust potential in the first 4 rounds. With that being said, I also think he has substantial upside. I love Keenan Allen. He would have been a top 5 wide receiver as a 23-year-old if he had stayed healthy. He was on pace for 1,450 yards and 190 targets.
But that was also the year that Phillip Rivers, when Keenan Allen went down that year, Phillip Rivers was on pace for, I think, 702
because of Keenan Allen. They worked their entire offense around him.
That's also when Ken Wisenhunt was gone, so that was like a different offense. But Wisenhunt, everybody knows that he's back and all that stuff. So it's going to be interesting. That's for sure. But I think Tyrell Williams is the one. In terms of cost, definitely Tyrell Williams.
Yeah. Sorry we get into it a little bit on Keenan Allen every episode for the listeners at home. I'm not sorry to Tags because I guess you're my mortal enemy in this.
Yeah.
But if you guys want a showdown, we're going to be doing an episode with Christopher Harris later this week, and he is really high on Brandon Marshall. And you know how Tags feels about him, so make sure to tune in for that one because it's going to be fun. Guys, let's move over and talk about quarterback. It's kind of a weird season this year where there's no one that it's Cam Newton. Wow, this guy could really break out, or Dak Prescott. But I've got a couple names up my sleeve. Andy, I'm curious who your guys are.
A guy that I've collected. Well, so I didn't get him this weekend in the Stopa draft, but I've landed him in most mocks. I'm all about Andy Dalton. I think the offseason has been great for him. Obviously, right? They had Mixon, they had Ross. We have a healthy AJ Green. He's a guy who was on an MVP trajectory just 2 seasons ago, right? He has a 33 touchdown season on his resume. I see no reason to believe that Andy Dalton can't be a 30 touchdown quarterback with 4,400 yards. You get him outside the top 120 picks right now.
He was one of the players on my list. You're not going to get any argument from me on that.
All right, Tags, I'm going to let you go before me, but don't steal my other guy because I had 2 names, and I was thinking I was going to be really cool with these 2 names, but if they're both taken, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, anybody that listens should know my name it's Tyrod Taylor. It's kind of dumb that it's this is basically the 3rd season in a row that Tyrod Taylor coming in is going to be completely undervalued. And, it's something that we do that Jeff Ratcliffe, I mentioned earlier, he talked about in last show, and that 40 rushing yards is a passing touchdown. I looked through the numbers and it's I wanted to get excited about Tyrod Taylor getting Sammy Watkins back. And while I still am for sure, and adding Zay Jones to the offense, and even Andre Holmes, I guess, is an upgrade over Marquise Goodwin on my end. But Tyrod Taylor, over the course of his career as a starter, he's only averaged 1 more fantasy point per game with Sammy Watkins in the lineup, so it hasn't really affected him. Looking at everything, the guys that left this offseason, Robert Woods and Marquise Goodwin, when targeting those 2 receivers, Tyrod Taylor threw 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. All other wide receivers over his course, 18 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. So obviously it really wasn't working for them. But looking at everything and the scope of things, Tyrod Taylor has finished as a top 7 quarterback in points per game over the last 2 years. And honestly, I'm pretty sure that we can only expect things to move forward without Rex Ryan as, the run first, give it to our running backs 40 times a game. And they have an offensive line that allows Tyrod to have some time, and in turn allows Sammy Watkins to dominate any cornerback that he comes across because, there's only a couple seconds that someone can actually hang with Sammy Watkins in terms of coverage. So for me, Tyrod Taylor is stupidly undervalued. And for me, if you were to tell me, Mike, if you're going to pick a quarterback outside the top 12 that you're okay with starting the entire year, 100% Tyrod Taylor. I actually have him ranked as my number 8 fantasy quarterback.
Andy, how do you feel about Tyrod?
Wow, 8 is bold. 8 is really bold. Yeah, I feel like the one thing that your casual fantasy drafter hasn't really adjusted to is that the Rex Ryan era is over, and there's no reason to think that Tyrod is going to finish necessarily as just a 3,000-yard quarterback this year. There's potentially a bump in volume there. We know he's going to rush for 500 plus yards, which is just a huge deal and a huge safety net for any quarterback. So yeah, I'm totally with you. I mean, I'm not with you in terms of top 8, but if we want to talk top 12, top 14, and certainly as a great draft value, he's an obvious play, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, they had 28 rushing touchdowns too, and I don't think that's repeated this year. I bet that drops off by about 10 just in standard regression terms. So I don't know, maybe those 10 touchdowns add on to Tyrod Taylor's value. And like you said, he was really good. I didn't even consider Tyrod Taylor or Blake Bortles because it's they're not really lottery tickets. We've seen him do it back-to-back years.
Right.
I just think they're safe bets.
Yeah.
I love Blake Bortles again this season because I think that his touchdowns are going to come way up. But the one guy who really stands out to me is Joe Flacco. I also had Andy Dalton here. But Joe Flacco, you talked about how many passes he threw this year. If you look at the 2 breakout quarterbacks from the previous 2 seasons, it's Cam Newton and Matt Ryan. Josh ADHD on Twitter, who does some work for Roto Grinders. He has all these awesome charts. Go ahead and give him a follow. He's a terrific Twitter follow if you're a big fantasy football nerd. But he had this chart where he showed Matt Ryan and Cam Newton's touchdown rates for every single season of their career, and it was right around the same mark, except for the season that they broke out. It was twice as high. So that's what it takes to break out, just having an explosive TD rate. I don't think it was really anything that Matt Ryan did that much better. Kyle Shanahan was fantastic. They had a lot of nice pieces, offensive line, everything clicking, but I really think it was just that TD rate. And so, if you're looking for someone who could double their TD rate, realistically, it's Andy Dalton and Joe Flacco. They both had really low TD rates last season, and they throw the ball enough. They've got good weapons. I could see it happen to either one of these guys where they explode into the top 5.
I just worry about Flacco's his red zone guys, because Jeremy Maclin hasn't been known to be like the top 10 red zone guy or anything like that. Mike Wallace obviously isn't that guy. Brashad Perriman is not that guy. Dennis Pitt is gone, and he wasn't that guy last year. So it's just like you try and figure out. The only reason I have issues with Flacco, and there's been a few people on Twitter that have told me, Mike, are you overlooking Flacco a little bit? And I went back and I looked at all of it. And I'm really, really concerned about his lack of red zone presence. Joe Flacco has never thrown more than 27 touchdowns in his career. So at this point, I'm pretty sure that we know who Joe Flacco is. I mean, he's been in the league for 10 years now. So yeah, I'm not going to...
We thought the same about Matt Ryan, though, right?
Well,
I did.
I liked Matt Ryan. So Matt Ryan, when he came in the league, Matt Ryan was someone that was getting better every single year. It seemed like he plateaued, and there was 3 years in there where he was almost like the same player, and I was like, man, I guess Matt Ryan was not going to turn into the player I thought he was. It's kind of like that trajectory that Derek Carr is on right now, where he's improving in every major statistical category. And I have my worries about him, too, is that maybe last year was his peak, and that people are kind of... And he just got paid for it. But... Joe Flacco...
Ryan really had a fluky bad red zone season 2 years ago,
in 2015
yeah.
for sure. And Devonta Freeman kind of saw the benefit of all that. So again, Matt Ryan is much better than Joe Flacco. I think we could agree on that. But like I said, we haven't seen any improvement in terms of overall yards per attempt, touchdowns, interception ratio. All these things have kind of gone down over Flacco's career. So that's why I can't buy. I mean, if you're...
I think his weapons have got worse. I think his offensive lines got worse. I think this year both those improved.
Yeah, the Woodhead addition is super helpful to Flacco this year too. Those are a bunch of just free, easy yards.
Yeah, that's back when he was at his best, is when Joe Flacco had Ray Rice in the backfield.
Yeah.
All right, guys, tight end. Andy, please don't steal my guy this time.
This is in some ways one of the most boring players on the board. I'm just surprised at how late he goes. Kyle Rudolph goes just outside the top 100 picks. He led all tight ends in targets last year. He led all tight ends in red zone targets, in targets inside the 10, inside the 5. He's perfectly paired with Sam Bradford. Not anybody's favorite quarterback, but if you're talking about somebody who's only looking short range, that's Bradford. Rudolph has been a wonderful target for him. We've seen Rudolph make ridiculous degree of difficulty catches throughout his career, coming off a really good season. It's not going to surprise me at all if he again finishes top 5 at his position. Again, not the most exciting athlete maybe, but just absolute guaranteed volume.
You're exactly right. I agree.
Yep.
Tags?
No, for sure. Kyle Rudolph is someone that's been undervalued. I have him on a lot of my MFL 10 rosters because he's being taken after guys like Hunter Henry, which is kind of odd because Hunter Henry is probably going to have half of the targets that Kyle Rudolph does.
Yeah.
Kyle Rudolph is someone that it's tough for me with Rudolph, to go head over heels in love with him just because I trusted him coming before last season. I loved Kyle Rudolph and I was waiting for it to happen, for it all to click, because you've seen Gronk-esque type ability in the red zone. Where if Kyle Rudolph, he's got massive hands, he's strong, in the size athletic combo is great, but he never really panned out to the player I thought he was, and there was times where I thought he looked a little bit lazy. Last year, it seemed to come together, and the odd part about that, Andy, is that, when Norv Turner went to Minnesota, everybody wanted to say, oh, Norv Turner's going to do it, and he's the one who's going to get in targets, and this is going to happen. Do you know that he had, I think it was 1.5 more targets per game when Norv Turner left the team last year?
Wow.
Yeah, so him and Sam Bradford obviously have a combination, they're in connection with each other, and that's why he led all tight ends last year in targets, something that people tend to overlook.
I love that one. I love Kyle Rudolph. We've talked about him quite a bit on this show. Tags, who's your tight end?
I got 2 here. I don't want to say Austin Hooper because I don't really believe it yet. I think it's going to take I think it's going to take time because I think he's still too young. But with no Jacob Tamme back, it's definitely possible.
He's on my list. I considered him.
I'm going to go with Coby Fleener. It's kind of like that post-hype sleeper. I did a study. It was before last offseason, and it was the terms of if you're a tight end and you see 82 or more targets, you are essentially a lock for top 12 production. And as it happens, Coby Fleener saw exactly 82 targets last year, and he finished exactly as the number 12 tight end. People tend to overlook that. Now, granted, is Coby Fleener going to be extremely volatile? Is he going to go up and down? Of course he is. But what tight ends outside of the top few, Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce, Greg Olsen, and Jordan Reed, outside of those guys, who is going to be consistently, 60, 70 yards and a touchdown every other game? It's just not going to happen at the position. So Coby Fleener is a guy, there was only 5 guys last year who had more 20-point performances than Coby Fleener. Brandon Cooks is gone. That's some targets over the middle of the field. A lot of people are expecting it to go to Snead, maybe Michael Thomas, a lot of different players here. But for me, I think Coby Fleener over the middle of the field, he's going to eat up some of these targets. I'm projecting him closer to 95 to 100 targets this year. And it could have been, developing some chemistry of Drew Brees, learning the Sean Payton offense. Who knows? But Coby Fleener has finished as a top 6 fantasy tight end before with Andrew Luck. So I see no reason it can't happen with Drew Brees.
And don't forget how much Drew Brees loves to pass to his tight ends.
Oh, yes.
We were talking about it last season. That's why Tags and I were going crazy about him. So we've got a chance to be wrong about him 2 consecutive years here, Tags.
Well, this year he's a whole lot cheaper. So, I mean, I was
a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I was trying to pick players that were down the board, because with tight end, it's easy for me to say Jack Doyle, but I didn't want to do that because it's way too obvious. I love Jack Doyle. I will have him on probably 80% of my fantasy rosters. But if you're looking for someone down the list, Coby Fleener is the 24th tight end off the board at 176 overall. That's nuts.
I think Fleener has a safe floor, and I think he has a nice upside. So I'm all over Coby Fleener. My guy is a little riskier, and it's Cameron Brate. I mean, obviously they just drafted O.J. Howard. They added some more weapons to their offense. But Cameron Brate and Jameis Winston had this connection going last year at the end of the season. I don't know if y'all know this, but he was number 1 in fantasy points per route run. He didn't run that many routes, but he was really good. I mean, you all remember him. Everyone was thinking, is this a fluke? And then they go out and draft O.J. Howard. Don't sleep on him still getting a lot of targets. Maybe they run 2 tight end sets. I know people are saying O.J. Howard's ready, but rookie tight ends do not pan out. I think Cameron Brate has significant upside this year, and everyone's sleeping on him.
Yeah, there's virtually no history, and again, we're coming off a really nice season for Hunter Henry, but there's virtually no history of rookie tight ends doing anything. It's super rare that it happens. So, and there's no reason to expect Jameis Winston to go against something that worked really, really well last year. I love that call.
The fact that Hunter Henry was able to do that as a rookie, does that not make you guys think he can be a superstar?
Oh, no, hell, he did it on 53 targets.
Yes, that's
point. Crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And that's what I've been trying to say to Bobby is Bobby thinks I'm a Hunter Henry hater. I'm not. I actually view him as a top 5.
He hates Hunter Henry. He writes in his journal about how much he hates him.
I hate him in redraft, 100%. I do. I think he's being drafted way too high. I think he was going as the number 8 tight end for a time there. I think it's come down a little bit, but I would much rather own Jack Doyle, 100%, all the time.
Man.
But Hunter Henry is a guy, he's a top 5 dynasty tight end. So I don't hate Hunter Henry. I just hate the situation right now.
Didn't you see that video I posted of Hunter Henry stopping a train and then launching it with his own hands?
Oh, my God. I did see the new Spider-Man movie yesterday, which was fantastic, by the way.
Same thing. Hunter Henry, Spider-Man, same thing. All right, guys. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. Andy, we really appreciate you coming on. It was a blast, and you changed my opinion on some players. So I'm going to have to go adjust my rankings a little bit.
It's great to join you guys. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. And for those of you guys listening at home, remember the Pristine Auction signed jersey giveaway with Antonio Brown. Leave us a rating and review, subscribe on iTunes, take a screenshot, and send it to us at contest@fantasypros.com. And make sure to tune in for that Christopher Harris podcast where there's going to be a showdown with Brandon Marshall. It's going to be a lot of fun. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening, and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.